can't accept me in the raw, then what are they going to be like when I'm made up? I don't believe in being false about myself. You can take me as I can take myself as I am, so other people should be able to do the same.
Everyone thinks her $22 million voice saved her from a life of misery. They couldn't be more wrong. Moments after the Britain's Got Talent final, she broke down so severely she was rushed to a psychiatric hospital under police watch. As a millionaire, she was still attacked by neighborhood teens who threw stones and flaming pieces of paper at her door. Her own brother publicly demanded money, threatening suicide if she refused. The fairy tale dream, it never existed. This is the brutal truth about the price of fame. A gilded prison where the tragedy was even worse than the poverty she left behind. Childhood and family tragedy. Susan Boyle was born on April 1, 1961, in the small town of Blackburn, West Lothian, Scotland, entering the world as the youngest child in a large working-class family with 9 older siblings. Her mother, Bridget, was already 47 years old at the time of her birth, which led to a difficult and dangerous delivery. During the birth, Susan experienced a temporary lack of oxygen for a few minutes, a complication that prompted the doctors at St. John's Hospital to make a swift and incorrect conclusion. They informed her parents that their newborn daughter had suffered permanent brain damage, a diagnosis that would cast a long, dark shadow over the next 5 decades of her life. Her parents, Patrick and Bridget Boyle, were devout Catholics of Irish descent who were raising a large family on a modest income, and they lacked the medical knowledge to question the doctor's verdict. They accepted that their youngest child was different and would face learning difficulties, so they raised her under the weight of this false label. Her father, Patrick, who had served in World War II and later worked as a miner, struggled to understand his daughter's emotional sensitivity. Whenever Susan tried to express her feelings or ask for help, he would often dismissively call her touchy, unable to comprehend the challenges she faced with social interaction and emotional regulation. This difficult home environment was made even more complicated by Susan's epilepsy, a condition that caused her to have frequent seizures without any warning. Her parents, unsure how to handle this medical issue, reacted in inconsistent and often unhelpful ways. Sometimes they were overly protective, keeping her indoors and shielding her from the world, while at other times they were neglectful, not knowing what to do when she had a seizure in public. Susan later recalled moments of waking up on the floor after a seizure, feeling completely alone because no one had stayed by her side. This lack of consistent support and understanding instilled in her a profound sense of abandonment that she carried with her for many years. As her older brothers and sisters grew up and moved away to start their own families, Susan remained in the family's council house. She gradually took on the role of the primary caregiver for her aging parents, dedicating her life to their needs. In 1997, her father passed away, leaving Susan to care for her increasingly frail mother on her own. For the next decade, her world shrank to the 4 walls of their home, where her entire existence revolved around looking after her mother. She had no time for a social life, no close friends to confide in, and no romantic relationships. The most devastating blow came in 2007 when her mother died at the age of 91. Susan was completely shattered by the loss of the only person who had been a constant presence in her life. For 3 days after her mother's death, she refused to eat or speak to anyone, locking herself inside the now empty and silent house. With her parents and siblings gone, her only companion was her cat, Pebbles. She lived a life of quiet solitude, surviving on a small unemployment benefit and finding her only comfort in music. She sang in her local church choir and occasionally at karaoke nights in local pubs, but her dreams of a bigger stage felt impossibly distant. The foundation of her life had been built on misunderstanding, loss, and isolation, creating a shy and insecure woman who deeply believed she was not good enough for the world. The pain of school and isolation. The school environment proved to be even more unforgiving than her home life, amplifying the pain and isolation that had already started to define her childhood. Armed with the brain damage diagnosis, the education system labeled her as a slow learner, immediately making her a target for cruel and relentless bullying from both her classmates and her teachers. Her fellow students quickly gave her the hurtful nickname Susie Simple, a name that followed her throughout her school years. They mocked her for everything, from the way she walked and talked to her struggles in the classroom. She was frequently pushed around in the schoolyard, had objects thrown at her, and was subjected to a constant barrage of verbal abuse. Reflecting on that time, she said, "You had to have a thick skin to survive school." The bullying was not just verbal, but also physical, leaving her feeling constantly afraid and alone. The cruelty was not limited to her peers, as some of the teachers contributed to her suffering as well. Living in an era when there was little understanding or patience for children with learning disabilities, the educational system was designed for speed and conformity. One of Susan's teachers regularly used a tawse, a thick leather strap, to hit her on the hands whenever she answered a question incorrectly or struggled to keep up with the lesson. This physical punishment for something she could not control reinforced the idea in her young mind that she was inherently flawed and unintelligent. She felt that the system was always rushing forward, leaving her further and further behind. Her epilepsy made her situation at school significantly worse, as her seizures could strike at any time, even in the middle of a class. When she would collapse and begin convulsing, she was met not with help or compassion, but with ridicule. Her classmates would often gather around her to laugh and taunt her, calling her names and making fun of her condition. They did not understand that it was a medical issue. To them, it was just another sign of her strangeness and supposed brain damage. This led to her being completely isolated from her peers, with no one wanting to be friends with Susie Simple. During recess, she would often stand alone in a corner of the playground, watching the other children play. The long-term consequences of these traumatic school years were severe, affecting her for the rest of her life. Susan left school with very few academic qualifications and with her self-esteem completely shattered. This made it incredibly difficult for her to find and maintain a stable job. She took part in government training programs and worked a series of short-term, low-paying jobs, including a 6-month stint as a trainee cook in a college kitchen. However, her deep-seated social anxiety and difficulties with communication made it impossible for her to stay in any job for long. In this lonely and judgmental world, music became her only true sanctuary. When she sang, she could escape from the harsh reality of her life and become someone else entirely. A person who was strong, confident, and admired. She gathered enough courage to enter local talent competitions, but her profound lack of confidence always held her back. She once auditioned for the television show My Kind of People in 1995, but was too nervous to make a lasting impression. For decades, her extraordinary gift remained a local secret, a powerful voice confined to the walls of her church and the small pubs of West Lothian, waiting for a chance that she believed would never come. The aftermath of Britain's Got Talent. On that fateful day in April 2009, everything changed in an instant. The video of Susan Boyle's audition was uploaded to YouTube, where it went viral with unprecedented speed. Within 3 days, it had been viewed over 5 million times, and within a week, that number had soared to 60 million. Susan, the unemployed woman who lived a quiet life with her cat, was suddenly a global phenomenon, with her story being covered by news outlets from around the world. However, this overnight fame came at a tremendous cost, as the sudden and intense pressure was more than she was prepared to handle. Her simple, private life was torn apart, replaced by the chaotic reality of international stardom. Paparazzi photographers began camping outside her small council house day and night, documenting her every move. Every word she spoke, every outfit she wore, and every action she took was scrutinized and commented on by the public and the media. After a lifetime of being virtually invisible, she was now one of the most watched people on the planet, a transition for which she had no training or support. Her schedule became relentlessly demanding, filled with a constant stream of interviews, photo shoots, and rehearsals for the show. She was also subjected to harsh criticism about her appearance, with many commenting on her unkempt hair, bushy eyebrows, and simple dress. The pressure to transform herself into a polished star was immense, and while she did make changes like dyeing her hair and shaping her eyebrows, she often felt like an imposter in her own life. The breaking point came on the night of the show's final, May 30th, 2009. Susan was the overwhelming favorite to win the competition, but in a shocking upset, she finished in second place behind the street dance troupe Diversity. Although she managed a gracious smile and congratulated the winners on stage, she was privately devastated. The accumulated stress and emotional exhaustion of the previous weeks finally overwhelmed her, leading to a severe breakdown. The day after the final, staff at the London hotel where she was staying became concerned about her erratic behavior and called for medical assistance. She was reportedly shouting that she hated the show and had thrown a glass of water at a staff member, showing clear signs of emotional distress. Under the Mental Health Act, she was voluntarily admitted to the Priory Clinic, a well-known private psychiatric hospital in London, for what was officially described as emotional exhaustion. This incident sparked a major public debate about the duty of care that reality television shows owe to their contestants. Many people criticized the show's producers, including Simon Cowell, for prioritizing high ratings over the mental well-being of a clearly vulnerable individual. The UK's media regulator, Ofcom, received hundreds of complaints from viewers who were concerned about how Susan had been treated. Although the organization considered launching a formal investigation, it ultimately decided against it. For Susan Boyle, the dream of a lifetime had quickly morphed into a public nightmare, as she discovered that fame had a price, and that price was her own peace of mind. A lifetime of misdiagnosis and illness. One of the most profound and enduring tragedies of Susan Boyle's life was the medical misdiagnosis she received at birth. For 51 years, she lived under the false belief that she had brain damage, a label that dictated how she saw herself and how the world treated her. It became the default explanation for all of her learning difficulties, her social awkwardness, and the relentless bullying she endured. This belief left her feeling like a victim of an unfair fate, burdened by a condition that she thought could never be changed or understood. It was not until 2012, long after she had become a global star and had the financial means to seek out the best medical care, that she decided to visit a leading Scottish specialist for a reassessment. After a series of extensive tests, the specialist delivered life-altering news. Susan did not have brain damage at all. Instead, her lifelong struggles were the result of Asperger's syndrome, a form of high-functioning autism. Furthermore, her IQ was found to be perfectly normal, directly contradicting the narrative that had defined her entire life. Susan kept this new diagnosis private for a year before revealing it to the public in December 2013. The revelation brought with it a complex mixture of relief and pain. It was a relief because she finally had an accurate name for her condition, which helped her understand that her differences were not a sign of intellectual inferiority, but simply a different way of processing the world. At the same time, it was painful because it highlighted the tragic injustice of her past. She realized that if she had been diagnosed correctly as a child, she might have received the proper support at school and in her community, potentially sparing her decades of misery and misunderstanding. In addition to her Asperger's diagnosis, Susan has also faced significant physical health challenges. In 2013, around the same time she went public with her autism diagnosis, she was also diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Her doctors instructed her to lose weight and make drastic changes to her diet, which meant she had to give up one of her few simple pleasures and sources of comfort: chocolate and sugary sweets. Her most serious health crisis occurred in April 2022 when she suffered a stroke. She kept this information private for over a year while she focused on her recovery. The stroke was severe enough to affect the left side of her body and, most alarmingly, her ability to speak and sing. For a time, she feared she might never be able to perform again, a terrifying prospect for someone whose voice had been her salvation. She embarked on a grueling rehabilitation process, working tirelessly with speech and physical therapists to regain control of her voice and facial muscles. After dedicating more than 1,000 hours to her recovery, she made an emotional and triumphant return to the Britain's Got Talent stage in June 2023, where she revealed her health battle to the world and once again sang "I Dreamed a Dream." While her voice may have shown signs of the struggle, her resilience was an inspiration. Though the event served as a stark reminder of the fragile nature of both her health and her career, family conflicts, and personal loneliness. The immense wealth that came with Susan's success did not automatically lead to a happier life. In fact, it introduced new and painful conflicts within her own family. Money became a source of deep division, particularly in her relationship with her older brother, Jerry Boyle. After she became a multimillionaire, Jerry approached her for financial assistance to save his struggling business. Susan agreed to help, reportedly giving him a substantial sum of £75,000. However, their relationship soon deteriorated into a public and bitter dispute. Jerry began speaking to the press, accusing his sister of being stingy and claiming that she was being controlled by her management team. He was also alleged to have threatened to take his own life if she did not provide him with more money. This public feud caused Susan immense stress and heartache. Following a heated phone argument in 2016, she cut off all contact with him, and the two did not speak for over 2 years. They eventually reconciled after Susan experienced another public breakdown at Heathrow Airport, but the conflict left deep and lasting scars. The greatest personal loss Susan experienced after becoming famous was the death of her closest sister, Bridget, who was affectionately known as Bridie. In 2015, Bridie passed away from cancer at the age of 73. She had been Susan's biggest cheerleader, the one who had constantly encouraged her to pursue her singing dreams and had ultimately persuaded her to audition for Britain's Got Talent. Losing Bridie meant losing her most important emotional anchor. Susan was devastated by the loss and had to take a long break from her music career to grieve. She also took on the responsibility of supporting her sister's daughter, demonstrating her deep commitment to family despite the painful conflicts she had endured. In her romantic life, Susan has remained largely alone. At her first audition, she famously and innocently confessed that she had never been kissed. While fame brought her opportunities to meet new people, her lifelong insecurities and past traumas remained significant barriers. She did have a brief relationship with an American doctor she met during a tour, and they went on a few dates, but the long distance and the intense media scrutiny made it impossible for the relationship to develop further. One of the biggest regrets of her life is that she never had children of her own. She has always loved children and dreamed of being a mother, even applying to be a foster parent at one point, but she was told she was not a suitable candidate. The solitude of her personal life stands in stark contrast to her public persona. serving as a poignant reminder that fame and fortune cannot fill the void of human connection or heal the deepest longings of the heart. The lingering troubles of fame. Even as a world-famous millionaire, Susan Boyle could not escape the cruelty of bullying. In a sad and ironic twist, she found herself being targeted once again, this time by a group of teenagers in her own hometown of Blackburn. Instead of treating their famous neighbor with pride and respect, a gang of youths began to systematically harass her. In 2017, the attacks escalated to a dangerous level. A group of around 15 teenagers repeatedly threw stones at her house, shouted obscenities at her, and even set pieces of paper on fire before pushing them through her letterbox. On one occasion, they surrounded the public bus she was on, throwing things at the windows and terrorizing her. Her journey is a profound reminder that the bright lights of the stage cannot always heal the wounds of the past, and that the greatest battle is often not the one for fame or success, but the quiet, lifelong struggle for acceptance, understanding, and inner peace.